Okay, we are going live streamed and good morning. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back to the International Women in Business May Money Talks Mastermind. I am Vihil Vigil. I am a women's empowerment business coach. My company is the Empowerment Empire, and our goal is to provide you, the woman entrepreneur and business owner and aspiring entrepreneur, with the tools and the insights that you need to really establish your business and grow. Because of course, that's the point, right? Is to grow a business to be sustainable so we can take care of our families, to grow our own legacies. And this whole month, the true reason why I think it's so important that we have these conversations around money, because for so many of us as Latina women or as women of diversity or as women in general, we oftentimes were not raised being included in those money talk conversations around the dinner table. It was not something that I experienced as a growing child, on learning how to manage money, grow money. What are some of the abuses around money that people experience? So I hope that you have been enjoying the program all month long. It is a fundraiser. So go to the Eventbrite link and register for $100 or $175 so we can reach that $5,000 goal to provide scholarships to women at the end of this year, which I'm so excited to be able to do. So with that, I would like to begin the conversation by welcoming our awesome guest. So we have this phenomenal lady that we have welcomed into the program. Let me pull this up. One moment. So a woman that came into my life and brought me to tears because we just connected so wonderfully. She is just such a spiritually guided, passionate, extremely educated, super awesome lady. And I am so grateful to have her on our show today. Yvette Kuyate, Esquire, wealth preservation attorney. She is founder and managing partner at Kuyate Law Group, board member at Victim's Voice, finance business partner at WealthWave, and CEO of the Wings Leadership Academy. Our topic today will be from survivor to thriver. I would like to welcome Yvette to the program today. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you so much. I just want to, I got to take you to lunch. That was a great intro. All those nice things about me. But yes, the awe is mutual. I'm so excited to be partnered up with you and be here and get to share some of my experience and talk to my hermanas. So this is great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, and she's a Boss Latina author. One of our Boss Latina anthology authors as well. I did want to mention also that there's like 2 spots left before we reach our goal of 50 women. So I'm super grateful that I met Yvette and we've had all of these wonderful connections. So tell us a little bit more about your background and how you became a wealth preservation attorney.
Yeah. Ooh, well, I don't know, how much time do we have?
I know,
today?
Right?
Right. So thanks for having me again. So my background is, I'll just start with this way. My practice focuses on estate planning, wills, trusts, all of that, and also victims' rights. And by that, it's usually anything having to do with abuse or domestic violence. And so when I talk about wealth preservation, it's really that intersection of both of my passions, which is preserving a woman's wealth, not just money, material wealth, right? Not just financial, but also her wealth and her whole being, and being able to really, take her on the journey from survivor to thriver. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm a survivor of domestic violence myself, and that's really why I'm so passionate about this topic. The other thing about wealth preservation, most estate planning attorneys, they are great at just doing the planning portion and, making sure your documents are solid and then handing you a binder and saying, okay, you're good to go. My philosophy and the way I focus is a little bit different. And I have a different lens. And so when I sit with a family, I really work like from the ending backwards, and I get into all of their finances, all of their decisions, because we know, especially for Latinos, the house, la casa, right? That's the 401k. That is the what I'm going to pass to my children. Right. And oftentimes we're just not educated enough, like you've heard all month, on what to do with that money. I still have clients that are like, I leave the money in the colchon, I put it in a suit because they don't trust banks and stuff like that. So my job as a wealth preservation attorney is making sure that what I'm putting together for them is going to have the end goal in mind, and they don't have to come back to me in 20, 30 years and say, I can't retire. I can't stay retired. Now I have to sell my house and move to, I don't know where, to with one of my children, right? So it's about making sure that they have what they need to retire and pass on their legacy in dignity. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell.
I love it. It's a lot like what I talk about when I'm coaching business clients. Is we start with what's the end goal, and then let's reverse engineer your plan so that 10 years prior, what steps you can take every day so that when that time comes, you have everything that you want to have at that point in time. Yeah,
absolutely.
So tell us, so I want to pull up my notes in regards as well. So I love that you vocalize that you call attention to the fact that, my grandmother always had like a stash of hundreds somewhere. No one ever really knew where they were, but she would always just kind of bust out every once in a while. And we're like, why don't you keep some of this money in the bank? Because that $100 bill could turn into like $500 bills if it's put in the right place. So I think one of the things we need to really work through, I think culturally speaking, is trust in banking systems, which is hard, especially with banking disasters that we've all experienced over the last 10 years. Especially with so many of people that we knew who lost homes because of bad banking decisions. And how do we go about really pushing through that distrust? I mean, to me, it's finding someone who I can relate to on cultural levels as well as business and professional levels, so that you understand where I'm coming from, as well as, what I bring to the table, culturally speaking, but also business speaking and professionally wise. I think it's something that we just need to have those conversations more. Yeah. Not being afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that, I've noticed a lot of it is just generational too. Like you said, we're talking about your grandma and my elders in my life, and obviously now you look at millennials and they're into the cryptocurrency and all of that stuff. So it's a change in the times and a change in the seasons, but still we still need to educate them, everybody. Yeah.
Tell us more about your own journey from survivor to thriver.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that question. Let's just sit back and get some coffee. It's like a novela. So let me share this part. When people think of, a lawyer or a professional, an executive, right? They always think, oh yeah, sure, they had to work hard. Sure, they had to do a lot of things, but they'll see that tip of the iceberg, right? They'll see that success and not everything that happened or that you had to go through to get there. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I completely understand.
So that is a lot of part of my story and a lot of what I try to share with others, because when we talk about specifically financial abuse and abuse in general, it's the unseen. And we think often, well, it couldn't happen to me. It couldn't happen to my hermana. It couldn't happen to my comadre. It couldn't happen to my best friend, right? There's always this like, but not me, right? And that's what I think we need to break down, that stereotype, because it did happen to me. I graduated law school, and at that point, my marriage was falling apart. I was going from being married to being a single mom with 2 little girls, and the financial abuse, led me to going out and living in a barn because financially everything was gone. And so sure, I had reached the top, right? I had graduated law school, but financially I had nothing, right? And then a lot of people also think it ends there, but we know that for women that are leaving a situation where it's toxic and abusive, that's most of the time the beginning. And they're going to have to go through maybe custody battles, maybe reestablish themselves, their brand, their name, literally their credit. And when you think about somebody that you love and trust and have been in a relationship with, well, it's very easy for them to literally commit fraud because they have all of your information. And so I call that post-separation abuse, because it doesn't necessarily end when you leave. It's just a different season of the game, if you will, right? And so a lot of that is my story, right? Like I said, I graduated law school. I was living out of my car. I ended up going to live in a barn with my girls where I studied for the bar. It was a really, really hard season. And when people look at me now, like, wealth preservation attorney, how could that have happened? But that's exactly it. It can happen to any of us. It doesn't discriminate by education, social, economic class, right? The color of your skin, nothing, right? Control, when we think of control, it is about controlling the other person. And in abusive dynamics, the victims usually looking at it or staying in it because of security, because of the relationship, right? The emotions, the family. But when we look, the person that's controlling isn't having the same reason. It's about the control. And in 99% of abusive and toxic relationships, there is financial abuse. And we know that even for human trafficking victims, and 80% of them experience domestic violence. So, and 100% of them experience financial exploitation. So my story is really just going from survivor to thriver myself. And how did I get here? Well, it took a lot of hard work, a lot of pain, a lot of learning, but it also a lot of discovering and healing, right? And going through the seasons of ups and downs and failures, and knowing throughout that failure was just not an option. It just wasn't. I had 2 little girls that looked up and depended on me, and we had to make it out 100%. There was no negotiation. So mentally, the mentality had to be, we will get out of this. This is only a season. We're going to be okay. Because when those fears came, when those thoughts came, if I had have buckled and just gave into those, and they came, trust me, there was many nights where I cried, like, what is happening, crying myself to sleep. But when those fears came and all of that, I had to just know and keep telling myself, we're going to be okay. Failure is not an option. And mentally, that mental toughness, that mental stability is what a lot of women that are going through that season struggle with, right? If you would have asked me back then, right, like where I'd be today, I'd be like, I don't know, no way. I was just trying to like pass the bar and get a job, right? But But now, as I've gone through my healing, my journey, as I've had a relationship now with God, I'm able to see that strength, that identity really, truly, for me, came from knowing the God that made me. And so when I go from, survivor to thriver, it's not in my strength. It's not in my way. It's completely 100% God that carried me and got me to where I am today. And now I lead a ministry, a women's ministry on domestic violence. And that's where we work on. We work on that identity, because if we can work on that, if we can work on solidifying your identity, whether you're a believer or not, it's you're already on your way. You're already on your way to your next platform.
Yeah, I resonate so strongly with your story, because I was definitely one of those women that, I was at the top of my game in my career. I was making a great salary. I had a young daughter, and the relationship that I was in at the time completely, was the source of me leaving my big 6-figure job with my retirement and all of my savings. And my daughter was in this like fairly expensive private school, and like we had all of these expenses, and I was still the, nails done in high heels, looking the part.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
behind closed doors, like I was just so suffering, and it strips you of your identity. And what I love how you bring that up, where you have to find yourself again. You have to remember who you are. And I was a powerhouse when I was, before all this experience all this trauma that I went through. And I felt that way. Like I felt strong, and I was pursuing these dreams, and I had this amazing little girl and this amazing relationship. And then when that relationship started to really become like this pressure cooker, where I lost all my source of income, and I was completely dependent upon this person to pay my child's school bills, to buy groceries, to put gas in the car, like the simple things that you take for granted, or the simple things that are just what you need for your life. When you are no longer in control of those things, then you become completely dependent, like a child again, on your parent. And you're not a child, you are a grown adult with, a voice. And when I finally was able to leave that relationship, it was like that pressure cooker exploded. And like my emotions poured out. I didn't care that I was leaving behind all of these things. I had to take my daughter out of school and put her into a different school, and completely removed myself, lost all of our friends. Like we moved to a completely different part of the state, because it strips you to the core. And when you have to start over, we lived in a hotel for a month and a half. We had to, we eventually ended up moving in with my parents so that I could then start over. And I was, this wasn't that long ago. This was less than 5 years ago. And that was my sense, was that this is only a season.
Yeah.
I will get through this. And I have this beautiful little angel looking up at me going, Mom, where are we going to live? Yeah. And it's just like that mama bear comes out, and you're like, I need to handle this. And so you embrace that explosion, because what it does is not only does it explode away all the bad, but it explodes your positive energy out into the world and lets your desires be known. Yeah. I just get so I got chills just talking about it, because it's so powerful when we finally get back to the point where we realize who we are again. And we realize that we are not that person that was being kept in a pressure cooker. We are so much greater. And whether it's, whatever higher power that we choose to believe in, know that put your intentions out there into the world, put out into the world what it is that you want. And those resources, go find them and allow them to come to you. I love the work that you're doing. I love the work that you do based on your experience, because you know, like I do, I like to do trauma-informed coaching. I know what it's like to be in that dark space, and I know what it's like to climb out of it. It's not easy.
Oh no, it's extremely difficult. And that I'm glad you said that, because the other thing that I want us to break off is this, well, why doesn't she leave? Why doesn't she just leave? If it's so bad, then go, right? And I love to talk to people and say, okay, let's slow down, right? If you had to leave your home today with the clothes on your back and maybe a backpack of clothes for you and your children, and leave and stay gone, could you do it? Could you do it? Because not everybody can. See, people are so afraid to leave their jobs that they hate, a boss that treats them terribly, right? Because of stability. And so if you're talking about, I'm willing to just leave today and lose that stability, whatever kind that is, economic, health, just another parent in the house because you're afraid to be a single parent all of a sudden, right? Whatever that is, let's slow down and not judge, because there's so much shame. And I love that you shared your experience, because those of us, and I feel like this is the other thing that we get wrong, is a lot of times, oh, well, it couldn't happen to them. They have access to money. They're making money, right? And so I'll talk a little bit about those red flags in a minute, but that's the other thing that we need to break off of. The mentality is like, I've had clients that are near public figures, CEOs of companies, and making a lot of money. I don't care whether you make $100,000 a year or $10,000 a year. Control is control. And if you can't access or retain or keep your money, you're not going to keep or retain your choices. And that's what it's about, right? You're limited in the end. And so, and I also will say this real quick, sometimes the more affluent or the more public some of my clients are, the harder it is for them to come forward and ask for help. And so if any one of you that are watching, if you take anything from this, I really want you to just get off the notion that it couldn't possibly be them. Like you shared, you were in your heels, you were, wearing the makeup, the nails, right? I was graduating law school. Who would have known? But that's the thing. It can definitely be at all levels. It's just that iceberg that you won't see unless you know what questions to ask, and unless you know and can recognize some of those red flags, which I'll go into in a minute.
Let's talk about financial abuse 101.
Okay. So 101, I think I kind of gave it up throughout, but let me just back up here, and I'll share some slides in a minute. They're loading. Financial abuse is present in 99% of all abusive relationships. And there are many different types of abuse, we know that. But we're talking about the financial abuse and control. And so that is the ability to either hide, take away, limit access to, withdrawal, whatever that is. And then the post-separation, right? Credit, ruining your credit, making you go through a custody battle just to wipe out finances. All of those are forms of financial abuse. And the point of it is control, limiting your choices to leave and stay gone. Yeah. So in a nutshell, and I'll go into them in a minute.
I just gave you access to be able to share your screen as well.
Okay.
I can definitely speak to that. It's, like I said, when I had to leave that job, it was not only, the hidden abuse had gotten so bad that I could no longer function. I was afraid to do anything for fear that it would set off my partner on, a rage. So I got to the point where I would take my daughter to school and would come right back home and sit in my depression and in my anxiety and my not understanding of what to do, because I didn't want to publicly, I was running art galleries in our community. We were like volunteers at a bunch of different places in our community. And it was devastating and embarrassing,
Yeah.
I think, to say, I'm going to crack the ice on this and be like, you know what? It's not all that they're cracked up to be. This person is not as great as they were. And I got threatened to be sued for like defamation because I broke my silence. And it was, it took me about 2 years for us to leave. And over the course of the weekend, we were able to like get a U-Haul, get a couple of people to help us and like get out of there. And then still over the course of like 6 months afterwards, we still had interactions with each other because it was still me figuring out how to not answer the call, how to not, still be a part of this unit, even though we were no longer living there. It was the fact that the abuse continued even after I left, because I had to burn through my savings to keep us afloat, because I wasn't mentally capable of doing the high level of work that I was able to do, let alone any level of work, because I was so inside my brain about who I was anymore.
And that's a really, really good point. 20 to 60%, and I think it's probably closer to 60% of victims lose their jobs at one point because of abuse. And the statistics are pretty staggering as far as how many of them will have to call in for work, right? And things like that. We know that domestic violence is their leading cause of homelessness, and that's pre-COVID, right? Pre-COVID. So before, before we were shut in the house with our abusers, right? This is something that was already happening, and we know that financially families were just crippled when COVID hit, and so we know homelessness is going up. So these are just things that I'm naming like pre-COVID. I haven't seen the new, post-COVID out, but I will tell you that the European Union, in the last Status of Women conference that they held in 2021, called this the shadow pandemic. So as the pandemic was happening, the victims all over the world, globally, were being in their home, were being forced to be in their home with their abusers. So now I can't go drop off my daughter to school. Now I can't go to the park. I can't have that play date. I can't call that comadre. He's there all the time, 24/7, globally. So it was very interesting to see all over the world how it was like this wake-up call. Every country by country, coming in and saying, this is a shadow pandemic that we're facing. And then of course the jobs and all of that. So I thank you for reminding me that, because that's something that most people don't think about, is the economic consequences, living day to day, right? And I'll talk about how that is sabotage in a minute. It's actually a form of sabotage. But yeah, definitely. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
And thank you again for having this conversation with us. I think it is so necessary that we're here all month long talking about money matters, and the fact that we're never a part of the conversation. And now that we are taking back that control, and we are starting the conversations and having these conversations ourselves, there are components to these conversations that we do need to talk about, such as financial abuse. Not only how do we build our wealth and preserve it, what are different ways we can diversify our income streams, but how do we protect it in a way that produces longevity, that produces a a future income for our children, a legacy for our families that we can control.
Yeah. Well, I think step one is, all right, which is I'm going to go into, is like, let's recognize the signs and stop normalizing it, especially in our culture, right? Because we come from a culture where it's very gender role driven, right? So, oh, he makes the money, he pays the bills, and I take care of the house. And that's not everywhere. I'm not saying that that's for everyone. And if that is, that's fine too. But it's so easy to get into this. It's like an open door. And if you don't recognize some of these signs, you realize, oh, before you know it, 20 years have gone by. And now you're sitting with an attorney and she's asking you, okay, how much money does he make? I don't know. Okay, where do you guys bank? I don't know. Okay, how much money do you have in a savings? I don't know, because they don't have access to anything. They don't have passwords to anything. They've never written a check, right? So they don't know. And it's financial illiteracy to the point of just complete sheer, darkness. And so we have to start with at least not going there, at least recognizing the signs, at least, making sure that we're not in that position so that we can continue to build wealth. It's very hard to build wealth and preserve wealth if you don't know what wealth you have.
Exactly.
Right? Or you're being constantly sabotaged to give that up. So these are just some of the red flags that I want everybody to kind of know of and think about. And when we think about financial control, it has the word partner here, but it could be, it could be a job, a coworker, it could be a friend, family, it could, it could be anyone. But for purposes of today, we're going to use partner, right? So these are a couple of them, right? Denying or limiting access to money, putting you on a strict allowance, right? And sometimes that's normal for budgetary reasons. But I've also seen like, well, he makes all the money and I get $100 a month for anything I need. And if I don't consent or don't do certain things, I don't even get that, right? That there's a limit. There's a limit to, okay, what is normal budgeting, and then now what is control, right? So I said this one, denying access to information, bank statements, passwords, pay stubs, right? Just completely being kept in the dark and even hiding money from you. So, having no clue. And we talked about that one too. Demanding detailed accountings of, what you bought at the store. Show me the receipts. What did you buy? Where did you go? Why did you do it? So criticizing these decisions. The kids need shoes. Well, why did you buy those shoes? Why didn't you buy something cheaper? Why did you buy them those socks? Do they really need them, right? So constant arguing and criticizing and just really beating down the independent decision-making power of just basic financial decisions, right? To the point where, like, I don't even want to spend money because it's going to cause an issue. That's not normal. It's not normal. We have to stop normalizing that. Threatening to withhold money, right? Again, so I said this again, like consenting, if I don't consent to this, I won't get something. I won't be able to feed my kids. Those are extremes, right? But making financial decisions without consulting or considering you, this happens a lot. Oh, I loaned somebody so-and-so some money and like now we can't pay rent, or now we don't have that money in the savings. Or, I just blew it on whatever toy, right? When there's other, like, it's something that maybe as a couple, you should have come into agreement before that decision was made, right? And this, I've seen extremes, even like I co-signed on so-and-so's house in your name, right? Like extremes, like these are extremes. So you could be very little or you could be very extreme, but these are some of the red flags. So we talked about this one. So the employment and education sabotage. And this is hard to wrap around our heads. This is actually forms of financial abuse. But really, if you go back to the 101, it's about control, and control with the goal of keeping you from making decisions to be independent. So if you think about that, this will make sense. So economic, employment, education sabotage looks like pressuring you to miss your work, be late, or even quit, or just stop, right? Like, it's just don't do it. Or if you just stop working, you don't need to work, right? And most of the time, it's not a hard and fast. It's
gradual.
Very gradual. I'll take care of you. You don't need to work. You can just stay home. Then when you do and you want to go back, you don't need to go back or quit, right? Just demanding, harassing at work and school, harassing coworkers, bosses, and friends, right? So that can look like calling, make sure you're there. Did you go to lunch? Who'd you go to lunch with, right? Who are you talking to, or showing up just randomly at your employment or your school just to keep tabs on you and make it known that I'm allowing you to do this, and so you better be behaving, you better be doing right by me, whatever I think that looks like, right? There's in Netflix, there's a Jenny Rivera special, and there's a couple episodes in there where it really like highlights this, where he's coming to her school and asking her friends about, how do you know her? What do you do? Where do you go together? Right? The goal is to sabotage, embarrass, shame, get to a point where it's so uncomfortable that you on your own make the decision to quit your job, your school, right? And now I've sabotaged you, so that income stream's not coming in. It also looks like belittling work or school, or criticizing your goals, right? Or even physically harming you from going, right? If I punch you, if I physically abuse you and you have marks on your arms, on your face, you're not going to go. And so again, we go to 20 to 60% of victims, they'll lose their job because they're missing work. So let alone the psychological harm, but also the physical harm, which can be just very, very, very serious, to the point where it's happening, but maybe they get really strategic with this, and they won't leave marks purposely on the face or the arms. The marks will be on the body, somewhere where they know you can cover it up, which is almost worse, because you're going to work or trying to go to work with, pains and aches elsewhere. So psychologically and physically, now you have to deal with both of it. It's a horrible way to sabotage. And then the criticizing, right? Like every time, for me, it was every time I would excel, pass a class, or, get better, it was like, yeah, but you still have to pass the bar. Yeah, but you still have to do this. Oh, you have to pass a background check. Like always putting down, belittling every effort. Yeah. Right. All the time. You get a promotion at work, and it's something exciting. No, there's no celebration. There's no flowers. It's like, oh, whatever, or not even acknowledge it. So not only is it hurtful, but it's also just to make you psychologically just kind of detach from that as an actual achievement. Right? Again, control, and really going after your identity and your confidence.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we get to the exploitation part. And again, I like to talk about this one as that post-separation abuse that can happen either during, right after, or even years, 10, 20 years, because that person still has access to your more personal information, most likely, right? So this can look like, taking all the money out without your knowledge. And that was me. That was going to pay for groceries, and all of a sudden, all of my accounts are wiped out because I had joint ownership, and that legally gave him the right to do that. So withdrawing money, right? Adding your name to credit cards, taking out credit cards, taking out credit without your knowledge, right? Without your consent, or purposely paying bills late to ruin your credit, especially if they're in your name. If I don't want you to leave and stay gone, and I know that you're going to have to get an apartment, you're going to have to, get financially on your feet, then I'll go after your credit to make sure that you can't get an apartment on your own. You're going to need me. Again, it goes back to the control. Not paying it at all, or running up a lot of debt, taking out, I've even seen cases taking out first or second mortgages for on your home, or even co-signing again for family. Like, my brother wants to buy a house, I need you to co-sign for him. My sister wants to buy a house, I need you to co-sign for them, or a car, or student loans. I mean, it's insane, but this happens so many times. It does happen. So yeah, those were some of the slides. We don't have a ton of time to go into this, but I love teaching about this. And really quickly, I'll just share a couple nuggets. What can you do? So I have a whole teaching that I do on the 7 money milestones that I believe take women from survivor to thriver. And you can contact me, we can go through that at another time, but it really goes through the 7 things that we should have in place. And then I have this other cheat sheet, right? That what are the things that I can do? And I call these financial restraining orders. And these are things like, what can I do to prevent my bank account from being cleared, from major assets being sold, contacting business partners and maybe even my clients to defame me, destroy my reputation. What are some things that I can do to cancel, just basic things that I have in place, like insurance for my kids, for myself, clearing out all retirement assets, things like that. So if you want to know more about those, you can contact me. But these are just some of the things that I work with some of my clients.
Can you go back to the 7 steps?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I closed it out.
That's okay. You have most certainly taken us on this journey, and I want to just recognize that and call that as such, that for any of the viewers who are seeing this, that if you are feeling like this is triggering for you, definitely reach out. Definitely reach out and ask for help. You can reach out to your medical practitioner, reach out, to Yvette, reach out to myself. We can connect you with resources that you need to help you with the emotions that you might be feeling right now, or with the taking the next steps as you see, something that you might really need to do, as if this presentation has really brought something up for you. So please know that we welcome you to reach out, knowing that this conversation can certainly bring up some things for a lot of our viewers. Yeah. Thank you for posting on the 7 money milestones. Is it okay if I screenshot this?
Absolutely. If you're watching it, yes, take a picture of it, screenshot, share it. I work with a company called WealthWave, the How Many Works company, and how this came about. So I ran several what I call No Women Left Behind conferences, and time again, when I asked my audience, have you, or do you know someone, or have you stayed in a relationship longer than you should have because of money? The chat, because we've done these virtually, right, with COVID, the chat goes nuts all the time. 100% of the time, 100% of the women say, yes, either I've experienced it or know someone. And so this really just created this aha moment of like, wow, this is something that we need to get out there and we need to talk about. So I love WealthWave and the How Many Works company. They flew me out. I talked about this, and they've been so gracious to really just get out there. They're a financial literacy company, but really get into the trenches of what they can know to empower themselves And I share this one because it doesn't matter if, again, you're making 10,000 a year, 100,000 a year. When you have a game plan, you know, okay, maybe I'm not at stage 6 where I'm building wealth, but I know that I can start working on my emergency fund. I can start putting away money a little by little and build my 3 to 6 months of income. I can start paying down some credit. I can, work on placing flags on my credit report and flagging it. And actually, there's a pending legislation right now. You probably know this, where for human trafficking victims, and I hope it expands to domestic violence victims, they're going to be able to get bad credit cleared off of their credit if they're able to show they've been a human trafficking victim, and just essentially like a clean slate. And that's going to be amazing because they need it. They need a fresh start. So
yeah,
hoping we can get that to victims of domestic violence too.
That would be game changing.
Yeah,
for sure. Because it would really open up those doors to, I am starting over. And I'm starting over with a clean slate, that I don't have to continue to clean up this mess for years and years and years. Because I think that is also so huge that, when we are rebuilding our lives after leaving an abusive relationship, that it's, for years, you have to continue to deal with it because you don't have that sort of a clean slate. You have to, rebuild so much, not only, sometimes
really
physically,
everything,
but mentally, financially, you have to completely reestablish yourself. It's like you have to completely renew everything, because you were stripped of it all.
yeah.
I want to also talk briefly, and I know we are coming down to time. We have about 10 more minutes, but I really want to talk also about what we can do. So say, you're seeing this presentation and you don't see any red flags in your relationship. You feel like you have a really good relationship, a really respected, partnership happening. I think it would be really good to also talk about, if you were to ever separate from that individual, maybe have that conversation now while it's going well. I can imagine, I know if I would have had that conversation with my ex-partner, there would have been a whole kind of blow up out of that one. But it's like, what can we do without, because it's not about like sneaking around the other person's back and saying, I'm going to make sure I'm financially solvent if you happen to like try to destroy my life. It's really having that conversation with your partner to say, I know that you respect me enough to recognize that we might not necessarily need to commingle our finances right away.
Mm-hmm. And that's a key word right there, right away, right? Right away. And I would say, if you can't have a conversation as a strong, independent woman with your partner about your need to be financially stable with or without them, if you can't have that conversation without blowups and sparks and a big fight, that should be a red flag for you. And you really need to pay attention to that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going down this track record. It's just a red flag to pay attention to, because in a relationship that is based on a foundation of trust and respect and looking out for each other, he should want to protect you and provide for you and protect your finances with or without him, right? That's a given. Well, again, I'm a Christian attorney, so I go back to the oneness, and once you're married, all of that. I do believe in that, in a kingdom marriage. That's why I said not right away, because you're in that dating phase, and until you get to that stage, and maybe you're married and you're still not at that stage, that's okay. But the conversations, those should be crucial and step one. If you can't have them, if there's stuff going on, then maybe you need to get counseling, or maybe you both need to get some sort of what's the scary things that are triggering, because it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be
Right.
blow-ups, right?
Shouldn't be
So that's
a cause for an argument. It should be, you should be able to have these conversations with your partner.
yeah. And when I'm dealing with wealth preservation as in the means of putting together estate plans for people, there's all different scenarios. There's people that have never been married. This is their first marriage. This is their first this is their first family. Then there's people that have, this is their second or third family. And oftentimes you will see that where, been there, done that. I'm not doing that again. And so second marriage, third marriage, we know better. We do better. Right. And so there's also that. I personally don't believe in prenuptial agreements just because, or postnup. I believe that if there's something there that's giving you that idea, then you probably want to rethink that idea in the first place. Right. Where, like, if you're thinking that this person you might separate someday, then why even take that chance? Or why even go there? But that's me. Right. Everybody has their own opinion on that. But I will say this, what are some things that you can do? Having your own saving account, having your own retirement account, getting financially literate, right? We can't control what's going to happen. Maybe you do get in a relationship and you do have to take time off work for kids or whatever, right? But knowing that you have something, and I don't care whether it's, open and you both know about it, or you're in a weird situation where maybe you have to give it to a friend to hold for you, but knowing that if you need to leave, you can go and stay gone without needing to wait is so powerful. And that's my whole goal, is how can I get as many women as I can in that position of knowing that if they need to make that independent choice for them and their kids, they have something to fall back on. They don't have to wait around. They don't have to take the abuse. They can make a choice, and finances are not going to be the number one thing that prevents them. It just can't. It just can't. We got to get out of that mentality 100%.
Thank you so very much, Yvette. This was a wonderful conversation that's so profound. I'm so glad that we are covering this topic in the program. We've talked all month long about different ways to, like I said earlier, diversify your income, forgive your previous money mistakes, how to become a better salesperson, how to be more successful in your business and in your organization. And I think this conversation, really drives home to the core for, I know, so many of us, that we should be having these open conversations with our partners, with our families, with those that are in our circle, because we owe it to ourselves. We're never going to change the trajectory of our family's level of wealth if we don't all feel comfortable having these conversations. And it will feel weird and awkward in the beginning, and that's okay. You will get through those emotions and more comfortable having the conversations around money, about where it's coming from, where it's going, how to invest it, and how to help it, how to have your money grow, protecting yourself financially, having the right insurances, having the right, things to carry you if you were to have to stay out of work for whatever reason. Having these different income generating activities that you perform, having diverse streams of income, in case one has to, dissolves, then you still have other ways of supporting yourself. I think this conversation hits to the heart of why we do this program every year, so we can open up the door to these sorts of discussions. For everyone watching the program, I want to thank you so much for continuing to view the program. If you haven't seen all of our other presentations, I will definitely be coming back into this live and dropping our new YouTube channel link for the Empowerment Empire. Please do the like and subscribe, which I always feel like a YouTuber when I say that, but I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud that we've been able to host so many phenomenal women in the International Women in Business May Money Talks Mastermind. It has given such an opportunity to put this well-needed knowledge out into the world, and specifically aimed at empowering women with this money knowledge. Let's break the cycle of being in the dark, and let's have these conversations with our families. So with that, I would like to wish everyone a thankful Thursday. I am so thankful for you, Yvette, to have come into my life and to come onto the show and into the program. I feel like when I met you, I met a friend forever. And I look forward to the day when I can give you giant abrazo, you know, and just be like, it will probably be crying, or I know I will be. And, but I'm so grateful for your expertise and your willingness to take time out of your day to share this information with our audience. So I look forward to seeing everyone. Tomorrow is Friday. We will be having another presentation tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. Please tune in and comment any questions that you have. Give us some hearts and love for your support. And if you would like to reach out, if any of the presentation brought up some things for you that you would like to just sort of bounce off of someone, please reach out to Yvette. Please reach out to myself. I can connect you with the resources that you need, because together we are stronger. Through collective collaboration, we all rise. So with that, have a beautiful day, everyone. And Yvette, I will talk with you again soon.
Sounds good. Bye, ladies.